Es tut mir leid, ich spreche kein Deutsch. So I have to speak in English, because if I spoke in German, this would probably be the last DocuWorld you would attempt. So today, anyway, thank you for joining me, and thank you for your patience with my language barrier. I really do appreciate it. But today I wanted to cover some marketing stuff, and specifically honing in on two topics that are totally related. The first one is going a little bit deeper into what Michael was talking about yesterday with the market opportunity for DocuWare, and unpacking some of those numbers a little bit. And then the second topic, directly related to that, is the DocuWare marketing strategy, right? And how do we develop a marketing strategy to attack this market from start to finish? So, starting with the market opportunity, it's really important to kind of step back and understand some of the broader trends that are driving adoption of DocuWare. And none of these will be a surprise to you guys, and if they are a surprise, we should probably talk about that. But the first one, I think, is one that we see every day, which is just the digitization of content, right? And it's not so much going paperless, which is important, but it's the concept of taking information that is analog and dumb and moving it into digital format where it's searchable, where it's useful for an organization. The second one is cloud, right? And I think, this is a global trend. It's not DACH, it's not EMEA, it's not the US, it's global. The adoption of cloud is real, and it's only getting bigger. And I think a couple years ago, it was kind of a question mark, but I don't think there's any more question mark today. Any new organization that's starting up today will be cloud native. The thought of building a data center from scratch is almost unheard of. And in 10 to 15 years, organizations that are managing their data centers will become rarer and rarer and rarer. Not extinct, for sure. There's always going to be a place for it. But cloud will continue to gain market share in IT organizations. And DocuWare is just a small part of that, right? But it can be a really useful part when you're talking to a certain organization. The third thing is automation, right? So as organizations are looking for cost efficiencies, as they're looking for security, as they're looking for any number of things, the need for automation and digital workflow is enormous, right? And again, this is something that you guys see every day, and it's one of the driving factors, beyond taking DocuWare from just a store and retrieve model to really leveraging the workflow capabilities. So with that context, if we sort of think about this as sort of the market, whether you're talking about DocuWare or not, let's talk a little bit about, well, what's driving DocuWare and what's driving ECM specifically. So what we see, and which is reinforced by a lot of different reports from a lot of different people, are sort of two macro industry trends and IT trends, if you will. The first one is sort of this ubiquity of file sync and share, right? So if you think about Dropbox or Microsoft Office 365 or Google Drive or even Box.com, these file sync and share products are everywhere. Everyone uses them. Everyone, and I would bet if I took a survey right now, almost everyone would raise their hand. Whether it's sanctioned in your IT department or not, you probably use it. But the problem is they're super limited, right? It's just a place to put stuff. It doesn't have sophisticated security models. It doesn't have automation. It doesn't even have basic task management. It's just a repository yes, collaboration, and yes, sharing is a little bit easier, but it's not much of an evolution from where we've been for the past 25 years. It's just in the cloud. The second major trend on the other side of the spectrum is the old ECM complexity, right? So if you think about Documentum, Highland OnBase, OpenText, right? These are players that fit a certain model, right? And their product fits a certain customer, but they are either unwilling or incapable of serving smaller businesses. They just don't go there, right? The licenses are too expensive, but more critically, the professional services are just beyond the reach of most small to mid-sized businesses. And so if you think about the left, and if you think about the left is not enough, and the right is way too much. So what's this gap in the middle? And what we call it the mid-market gap. There's a lot of different terms for it. But it's that SMB company, 10 to 20 to 500 employees that are looking for digitization, they're looking for cloud, they're looking for automation, they're looking for everything that we think about when we think about what's driving DocuWare. They're looking for the right price point. They're looking for the right feature set. So they don't need everything, they just need the right feature set to do their job. And they're looking for an incredibly usable product. No one wants to use PeopleSoft. No one wants to use Documentum. And if you guys have ever used those products, like I've used those products, you understand what I'm talking about. They're torture, right? But they're looking for high utility, but easy to use software. And these are the strengths of DocuWare. And so we see this trend and this trend driving adoption of DocuWare more and more and more. And I think you probably see that too. Okay, so if we think about this mid-market gap, and we think about sort of the company profile that fits here, we have to figure out, well, how many of these companies are there? What is the real market opportunity? And so this is what PwC did for us a couple months ago, where they really took the time with their own surveys and interviews, and they did their own research to really understand the scale and the scope of what is the market for DocuWare. To really put a box around it. And the easiest place to start is, well, just how many companies are there in this box, right? And so in the UK, there are 126,000. In France, there's 93,000. In Spain, there's 81,000, which is all very exciting when I talked to the EMEA guys yesterday. But what's interesting to you is, Doc, there are 270,000 companies that fit this model. Now, there's a lot of companies that are smaller, so there's a lot of companies that are 10 employees or less, and there's a lot of companies that are 500 and above. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about companies that fit into that mid-market gap and DocuWare's sweet spot. Okay, so if there are 270,000 companies, how many of them have something? Right? How big is the real market for this? Okay, there's two ways to measure this. The first one is, how many companies have anything, which is 32%. So 32% of the companies in the region that I was just talking about, and Doc, the adoption is a little bit higher, have something. 32%. Now, that doesn't mean that they've adopted ECM across their whole company. It just means they've purchased content services or ECM or document management for something. Okay? And then we think about, okay, what is the financial value of this market? And it's $12.1 billion all in. So if every company bought the technology for every user, which I know we would agree would never really happen, but again, you have to draw a box around it. what would that value be? And PwC estimates it to be 12.1 billion euro. Of that, 1.9 billion has been spent, 16%. This is current state. So the white space here, or the green space, or the blue ocean, or whatever you want to call it, is huge. So what are the projections for the future? So between now and 2022, so about 3.5 years, this is what PwC estimates will happen. The number of companies with something will grow to 40%, so about a 25% jump over current state. And the market will grow by 1.2 billion. And that includes companies, new companies buying something, as well as current companies that have something buying more. These are not small numbers. Okay, so of that market, are they willing to buy? Well, 40% say, well, maybe not yet, okay? 30% say, well, maybe, but 30% said yes. So, all in, of that market, 60% are looking at something now, right? They're not looking at something 6 months from now, or a year from now, or 2 years from now, but now. That's exciting. Okay, and then finally, what are the business use cases that we're talking about? So, of the companies that have adopted ECM to some extent now, where are they using it in their organization? Because that can give us a roadmap for the future. Well, 61% invoice processing, and that should surprise no one. 54% are in human resources, 50% are in sales and marketing, and then 52% are in general document management, largely unspecified. Again, these are encouraging numbers because organizations are adopting ECM in the use cases where DocuWare is strong. So, just to wrap this up a little bit, some big green numbers for you. So in Europe, there will be 46,000 new ECM customers. In DOC, that translates to about 21,600 new customers in the next 3.5 years. Creating 1.2 billion euro of value. And consistently over 50% will be buying it for the use cases that we all know and love. And again, you can call it white space, you can call it green space, you can call it blue ocean, you can call it whatever you want, right? But at the end of the day, it's opportunity. It's opportunity for DocuWare the company, it's opportunity for DocuWare the product, it's opportunity for everybody in this room. So if that's the market, right, if that's the box that we play in, and it's a big box, the question becomes, how do we go after it, right? And the question, at least in my world, in the marketing world, is, can the pipeline keep up, right? Because if there's 21,000 companies in your world that are willing to buy, how do you go get them? And so what Herman asked me to do is to walk through a little bit of the DocuWare marketing strategy and sort of how we think about building pipeline for sales. Right, pipeline. Okay, so before I talk about DocuWare, the company, and I have to move from DocuWare the product to DocuWare the company because, right, it's the same. So DocuWare the company. So what is the DocuWare the company marketing strategy? And before I get started on that, we have to step back and think about how do people buy technology? And what Gartner estimates, based on their infinite wisdom, is that the average B2B sales process, no, excuse me, I have to say the right words. The average B2B buying process is 16.3 months. So on the left, this is a person saying, maybe we have a problem. Going all the way through the stages of defining that problem, identifying potential solutions, identifying candidates for solving that, and ultimately selecting one, right? From start to finish, 16.3 months. That's a global number, by the way. The average B2B sales engagement from initial contact to closed won or closed lost or closed is 7.4 months. This is what the customer's thinking about, but all you see is this. So, what happens here? What are they doing? I don't know. I mean, you know, this is the buyer's journey, right? They could be, everybody's buyer's journey is different. That people zigzag all over the place. But if this is sales, this is marketing, right? And it's encouraging to think of it not as two parallel tracks running next to each other, but as a journey that we go on with our customers where we get more comfortable with one another as we go along, right? And starting from total strangers, so yeah, okay, maybe we like each other, okay, I'm gonna talk to you, and all the way down to I'm gonna buy from you. And so marketing is here, and that's really kind of what I'm gonna focus on today. And within that, there are a dozen touch points. No one ever goes up to DocuWare's headquarters, knocks on the door and said, I'd like to buy some ECM. Maybe that happens to you guys. I've never seen it happen for us. I wish it were that easy. But the reality is there's dozens and dozens of touch points before a person even raises their hand to talk to us. And that's where marketing tries to help the organization by drawing them in, by getting them comfortable with the company and with the product and with the potential. So, from a marketing perspective, we focus here. And the traditional buyer's journey, and I didn't make this up, this comes from people much smarter than me, is broken into 3 different categories. There's awareness, there's perception, and there's consideration. And these words sound very obtuse, so I just want to break it down a little bit. But awareness is literally awareness, right? The company, the customer, has no idea who you are. And so what we're doing here is we're just introducing the name. We're introducing the idea, right? This is not a deep commitment, it's just an introduction, right? DocuWare is a company and a product that does a thing that you might be interested in. Perception is when a customer starts to understand that DocuWare may be a good fit to solve their problem, right? So they've identified their problem, they've put a box around it, they have a shape for it, and they're looking for a solution, and perception is the phase where they think DocuWare might be a contender. Consideration is where they think DocuWare is one of the best solutions possible. Maybe not the best solution, but one of the best solutions, right? It's where they're seriously considering DocuWare as an answer to their challenge. And ultimately, that leads into engagement with the sales organization. Make sense? I wish I thought of it, but I didn't. I'd be much more famous. Okay, so narrowing in on what does DocuWare do in these different phases. So within the awareness phase, again, this is just introducing DocuWare, right? So what we have here is a lot of advertising. And I don't mean advertising like like print although yes, we do print magazine, and we may be the last company on earth that does some print magazine advertising, I don't know. But we do print advertising, right? We do digital advertising, we do events. And yes, you could consider events as lead generation, and that's true. When we go to an event, we often come back with lots of leads. You guys probably do too. But for every one person that stops to talk to you, there's 100 more that walk by. And those 100 more are looking at you, and they're looking at your logo, and they're looking at what you do, and they're saying, okay, and they're filing that away in the future. Right? So yeah, leads are a potential. But the power of awareness is even more. So DocuWare, the company, spends a lot of time and effort just on brand awareness. And look, the KPIs here are very fuzzy. It's very difficult to measure the ROI of brand awareness activities, right? But hopefully, the idea is that it is the investment that lifts all boats in this room. From a perception phase, right? So this is where we're starting to share information about the solution. It's where our thought leadership comes into play. And the idea here is to say, okay, I'm going to give you something of value in exchange for your contact information. Ebooks, webinars, ROI studies, the blog, all of this is free in exchange for your contact information, right? And when we get this contact information, it's not a lead. I'll talk about that in a second. It's just contact information, right? They're willing to say, okay, DocuWare, what do you have to say? Okay? So this is perception, right? Now they're starting to understand that DocuWare may be relevant to their problem. And then when we get to consideration, it's all about the product, right? Because this is the point where we've brought them far enough into the funnel to say, okay, let me sit you down and let me really talk to you about DocuWare, the product, and why you should seriously consider it for your challenge. And what you see here is the website, which is probably the single most powerful marketing tool that anybody has. It's white papers, technical white papers, which I know you guys can also relate to that. And it's case studies, right? When you can show a customer achieving success in the same business area as your prospect, I mean, is there a more powerful marketing tool? I don't know. Maybe, but that's a really good one. And of course, across all of these, you know, there's a lot of email. My God, does DocuWare send out a lot of email. So over 3 million people received something from us last year. You know, some of these stats are good, some of them are not so good, but you know, email is one of the most powerful marketing tools we have, not just to introduce DocuWare to new people. Actually, it's kind of useless in that regard, but it's super useful in keeping people warm to the brand, right? To surface DocuWare frequently in their inbox, to keep the brand name, to keep the product name, to keep the value proposition constantly there. Not annoyingly, it's a very fine line, but there. And then, of course, the transition point, right? So they've gone through awareness, they've gone through perception, they've gone through consideration. Now they're at the point where they're convinced DocuWare is a good fit, and they reach out to us and they say, I would like to talk to a human at DocuWare. Typically that's in the form of a demo request, or it could be a free trial, or it could be just the contact form on the website. It could be any number of things. Sometimes it's a chat feature. if you go to our website, like I'm sure your guys' websites, there's 6,000 different ways that somebody can contact us. But at some point, a person becomes so convinced that DocuWare is a good fit that they say, I want to talk to a human. And for us, that's when it becomes a lead. Okay. And just, so that's sort of the start to finish funnel. And just to give you guys sort of a snapshot, because I'm almost out of time here, of where we leverage our investments. Here is a high-level overview of where DocuWare spends its marketing money. Okay? Now, the dark blue down here, this is just infrastructure stuff, right? Annoying things that we all have to deal with. The red boxes are people, and the blue boxes are non-people program spend. The biggest single investment DocuWare makes is in you. Period. We spend more time and more money on enabling partners than we do on any other activity. But you can see the investment that we make in everything I just talked about, right? Brand awareness, again, with super fuzzy ROI. I don't really know. I don't know if anybody really knows, and if they do, I'd really like to talk to them, how to measure the effectiveness of some of this activity. But we know it doesn't just benefit me. It benefits everybody, and everybody down the hall, and everybody in the United States, right? When we spend the time and effort to put DocuWare, the product and the name, out into the marketplace, and we don't do it haphazardly. We don't buy the back cover of Forbes magazine or The Economist, right? We don't do general awareness. That is a waste of money. Where we put the DocuWare name is in front of the target groups that we want to talk to. So where do finance professionals hang out? That's where we're going to advertise. Where do HR professionals hang out? That's where we're going to advertise. So when we talk about awareness, it's not trying to just, it's not like the Super Bowl, okay? It's a little more targeted than that. But at the end of the day, it's money spent that increases the brand's perception for everybody. I only had a half an hour, and I think I filled it just about to the minute. And if you guys have any questions, or if you want to talk about any of this stuff, please find me afterward, during the break, during lunch, whatever. I'm happy to talk about it in depth, about whatever.